Councillor Tue22.
Mr Mayor, the Council Tax Support Scheme has been through Cabinet, it's been through scrutiny. Scrutiny gave some very useful suggestions that we will try and incorporate, particularly with criteria of applications for the crisis funds. And also, I know that scrutiny are quite keen to set up a targeted finish group or some sort of working group to look at the Council Tax Support Scheme in its first year. And then on review after the first year, how we change it going forward if need be. I've got nothing else to say, Mayor, given the time, so I move reception and adoption of the report.
Councillor Jeffrey Cook.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a measure which has been imposed upon local government by national government, and it's one of a number of measures that national government have pushed down to local government. It seems to me in the hope that local government of all colours will take the blame for a very unpopular measure. It has been transferred to local government with a 10% cut in funding, which, as far as Barnet is concerned, is £3.2 million. And this is just for the coming financial year. Right, Mr Mayor, I'll show you this one. It's a 10% cut in the coming financial year, and there are strong rumours of a further cut in the next financial year, which would need to be the subject of another report and decision by this council. I hope that that will be done in good time to give due consideration to what are some extremely difficult decisions. The transitional funding which has been given by government on certain conditions is only promised for 1 year. I thank the officers for what has been
Carry on.
What has been a very thorough thorough consultation, and I think the officers have made the best of a very bad job. On this side, we support the measures on empty and second homes as a strong contribution towards meeting the funding gap. We also support the crisis fund, but for those members who may believe that the crisis fund will provide ongoing support for those in the very worst circumstances, I understand that is not the case. Crisis is time limited. It's sort of transitional grants which will not continue. And so what is the impact upon the very poorest people in our borough? Obviously it's going to be devastating for them. And also there will be an impact on the council tax collection rate, because the council will be trying to get money from people who have not paid council tax in the past, and the risk may or may not be transferred to Capita because it's not part of the scheme as negotiated at the moment. We do not know whether or not that risk will be collected, will be transferred. Mr Mayor, I see a red light, but...
You've had extra time. It's a red light after extra time. Sorry, Councillor. We are going to try and get something done about the microphones. I've already had a discussion.
Why should I believe you?
Councillor Lord Palmer.
Mine seems to be working. It is, yes, absolutely.
Councillor Man of Influence.
we've had a couple of motions where we've all agreed, which was a rather nicer way to end this council meeting. And indeed, on this particular motion, I'd like to compliment the officers and the administration on making the best of a bad deal. The actual scheme proposed in great detail is very well put forward, taking into account all the opportunities that there were to mitigate the reduction in council tax benefit, now called council tax support, for people living in this borough. And Councillor Cook was right to point out that we have taken advantage of the 2.2 million in revenue from things such as empty homes, which not all boroughs have done. We have also in the town, according to the scheme, taken advantage of the 8.5, the transitional funding, which has allowed the council tax charge to be, the rebate to be 8.5% less for people to pay, the less for the rebate, other than the rebate. The trouble is, as Councillor Cook pointed out, that for instance, if a council tax is say £1,000, and you were getting that all as a rebate before, you will now have to pay £85, and you've never paid council tax before. And therefore, the collection rate, as Councillor Cook points out, is bound to cause a problem. And I must say that I was very disappointed when this scheme, which I spoke on in the House of Lords, on this scheme, because I and some crossbenchers said that the way to fund the gap, sadly there is a gap, would be to give local authorities the option to reduce the civil persons discount from 25% to 20%. And that 5%, this would mean that people who get a single person's exemption would have to pay a few pounds more. But they are people who actually pay council tax, and the collection rate would thus not go down. This was, and I can see Councillor Coleman making blue faces, and he's quite right, because the Labour Party and the Three Line were against that, and the Conservatives were also against it, so it was crossbenchers and Liberal Democrats. But what we've got here now is a scheme, and it's not our council's fault. We've got a scheme where it's 8.5% of council tax on people who've never paid it before, and that is going to be very, very difficult to collect. And it's also going to be very hard on those people at the bottom end of the food chain, very often the working poor, who are going to be called on to pay it. So I support the scheme, but I'm sad that one way of easing it did not take place.
Councillor Thomas, to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I would say with the collection rate, we have factored that in, and the scheme does factor in 70% collection rate, so we are acknowledging that we won't be able to collect everything there. And we realise that this is the first time we've done this, so we're going to have to suck it and see, as it were. And I think that come this time next year, when we've got the results in, we've seen how this scheme goes, we can then look. I've heard no rumours of a further cut to this, but with the economy as it is, we don't know what's going to happen, do we? But we have to be cautious, and I note the congratulations to officers for a very thorough report. I know a lot of consultations went into this, and in the consultation pack you can see all the responses, and actually those who consulted, both those who are claimants of council tax benefit and those who aren't, agreed with the principles on which we set out this consultation, and which we said as an administration we would like to see the scheme operate. So it's had the backing of the public. As I say, it's the first year, we'll see how it goes, and the finances have been stacked up very cautiously. As I say, it's 70% collection rate anticipated. Hopefully it'll be more. I think that is quite cautious. Mr. Mayor, I move the report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council is asked to approve adoption and reception of the Cabinet report. All those in favour, please show. That is a majority in the chamber. Those against? That is carried, Mr. Mayor.
Right, councillors, we have no reports from the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, so we'll move on to item 4.4, report from the Licensing Committee. Councillor Tamburides, please.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mayor, and I move for reception and adoption of the report. Thank you.
Councillor Moore, do you have a speaker for this? Councillor Cohen, do you have a speaker for this?
Well, I'd like to address something to Councillor Vickers, which should be of interest because it's an emerging problem with betting shops. Because on page 215, the second objective is to ensure that gambling is conducted in a fair and open way. Now, members may often wonder why there are so many betting shops in the house. And the reason is not an obvious reason. The reason is because at the moment the law only allows a betting shop to have a maximum of 4 gaming. 4 gaming machines. Yeah? That's machine or something less and card games. That's where the large bookmakers make their money on the high street. It's not through people coming in and betting on the traditional sport. So the reason why they're opening multiple shops, for example, in North Finchley, you've got 2 Paddy Powers, 2 William Hill. It's because instead of 4 machines, they get 8 machines. A lot of people aren't aware of that. And it's beginning to emerge, Mr. Mayor, and our press is trying to take into consideration in relation to gambling conducted in a fair and open way, that these machines are not fair and not open and not transparent. Because nobody is clear what the percentages are and what the odds are. I say this I don't know whether you have the authority on the license committee to raise those issues when we make application, but it's something that's emerging nationally, and it's real concern that vulnerable people are basically taken for a ride and ripped off, and their money taken away from them in these machines.
Councillor Tamburini.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mayor. We'll take on board what Councillor Cohen has actually said and we'll get to it. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, does Council move adoption and reception of the report from the licensing committee? Those in favour? That is carried, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, we come to the report of the Head of Governance. First item is Chief Officer appointments, and there is an amendment to the name of Councillor Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the amendment by name. I have to say I've seen some daft things in my years on this council, but this list of officer titles does make me skittish. We welcome some new senior appointments. I'm sure they're extremely capable. Some of them have served the council for a number of years. Some of them we look forward to working with. But I'm just a bit mystified by the job titles. The wonderful Mr. Nari, whom we all big fans, is appointed Director of People. However, Ms. Wakeling is appointed Director of Adults and Communities. So particularly the people that Mr. Nari is Director of don't include any adults. And of course, Ms. Wakeling is also Director of Communities plural. How many communities have we got now? I'd say we've got 1 Barnet community. Now, the Admiral's Ward is appointed according to the paper reports, I think, Director Place. Now, I wasn't aware that was even I was wondering whether she could be appointed Director Haddock or Director Cotton Chips. Because, frankly, it would be just as meaningful to the average Barnet resident. And as for Ms. Salter, who's appointed Director of Assurance, goodness knows what her role involves. Presumably involves coming up to councillors and going, there, councillor, don't worry about it. Mr. Mayor, can we please, if we're going back to a proper committee system, where hopefully the committees will have titles that tell the residents what they do, can we not look at this and appoint the chief officers of this council to have titles that tell us and the residents what they do?
Councillor Richard Cornelius.
Once again, I find myself in agreement with my ward colleague. These titles would not be the titles that a normal person seeking to inform would choose. In fact, I remember being indignant about some of these titles when the late and great Sir Simon Milton proposed them. And so we can't blame the Labour Party for them. It's a Conservative product. Rather than have this referred back to officers to do. I think it's actually for us members to think of better names in the future, and I'm sure that under the committee system, future titles will be more user-friendly than these. I'm reluctant to change them because there are contract difficulties in so doing. However, I think this is something that members should take on board at various committee meetings to make sure nothing like this emerges again. I would also like to stress how much I welcome the officers who are taking up these jobs, and I look forward to them working well with the council. Thank you.
Mr Mayor, we have an amendment in the name of Councillor Brian Coleman. Will all those in favour please show?
Never mind, Brian. It'll be 120,000 a year.
The amendment having been carried, forms part of the substantive motion. Council is asked to note the appointment subject to that amendment. Is that agreed? We now come to the appointment of Mr Andrew Nathan as the Head of Governance with effect of 1st April 2013. Council is asked to note that appointment and also asked to confirm Mr Nathan as statutory proper officer for the responsibilities listed in the order paper. Is that agreed? We now come to the supplemental report of the Head of Governance. There's an amendment to the minutes. Is that agreed? Agreed. Correction to an answer in council questions that has been circulated. It's question 34. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 5, political balance. As a result of a reduction in the membership of one of the political groups and one of the members becoming independent as from the last council meeting, there has been a recalculation of the political balance. Council is asked to note the political balance of the council is 37 members of the Conservative group, 22 members of the Labour group, 3 members of the Liberal Democrat group and 1 independent non-aligned member. Council is asked to indicate whether it approves the allocation of seats on committees in accordance with the political balance regulations on the basis of seats only to be allocated to the political group represented on council, or that council approve the allocation of seats on committees in accordance with the political balance regulations on the basis of seats being allocated to the political groups represented on council, and an allocation of seats on such overview scrutiny excluding business management overview scrutiny committee as council may determine. So essentially it is a decision for council to make whether or not seats are only allocated to the political groups or whether seats are allocated to the political groups plus a seat allocated to the independent member.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Before I start, it's interesting to note the last vote. You see, you don't need to change the system of council to express a bit of independence when you vote. I've asked several times when the political balance calculation was going to be brought forward. I regret that it was circulated at the meeting so that we haven't had an opportunity to discuss it. However, I would propose that Council votes for recommendation 2B, and that in the interests of the balance we discussed at Constitution Committee a number of years ago, when we decided on parity across the pension committee, that the pension committee nominations remain as 2 for each. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Cohen.
Yes, I support what Councillor Moore is proposing. I also share her sentiments. It's disappointing this was given to her at the very last moment. I would have in relation to the suggestion that we change the allocation of Lib Dem seats on pension fund. I can only imagine Councillor Finn had some input into this, because he's obsessed at the Constitution Committee about why we have to do Lib Dem on the pension fund. And it would be bizarre in the least when the Conservatives have lost one member of the group, then to gain an additional seat in the committee. That is just preposterous. So I support what Councillor Moore said.
Councillor Cornelius.
Well, actually, despite all the whining, I absolutely agree. I thought that was quite unnecessary, actually. I would have thought it would be quite obvious that no one in this chamber would wish to deny the democratic rights of an elected member. He's been elected by the people. It is not for a party to remove his right to speak. And so we will be supporting B. And actually, Councillor Cumming is quite wrong. It was I who was suggesting that actually I can't see why it's not politically proportionate, the pension scheme, but he has persuaded me that it should remain to. So he's been quite unjust.
There does seem to be unanimity amongst the leaders of the group for option 2B and for the pension fund committee representation to remain equal between the groups. Is that agreed by council? Agreed. There is no.
Right, we move then on to item 4.7, questions to representatives of outside Barnet bodies. Councillor Coleman?
It's tabled.
It's tabled.